Good morning. This is VirtualPBX-admin training. Got started a little early, so I'm going to wait a bit before I dive into the meat of the training. Training lasts about an hour and a half. Since it's so long, we do record these trainings, so you can always come back later if you can't stay for the whole time. That also allows you to send a link to other staff members who may need to be system admins on your Dash account. Feel free to make use of the chat feature within YouTube to ask questions about a particular feature, and I'll try to address those questions as I see them. You'll see in the show notes or description, I have some links there. The most important one is probably the Business SMS webinar series. One of my colleagues runs that every other Thursday, basically just covering different things about the SMS registration process, but also just do's and don'ts and best practices. And that's if you want to make use of texting on our platform, as that's a new, I guess, regulation that came about via telecom. All right, so here you see our Dash login page, which is at dash.virtualpbx.com. We need 3 pieces of information in order for you to get logged in. The first is your email address, and that should be in all lowercase letters. Second is your password, which should be, which is case sensitive. All right, and then lastly, we need the account name, typically your organization name, business name, or your own name if you signed up under yourself. Now, if you don't have your password or it's not working properly for you, down here, just above the sign-in bar, we have a forgot your info link. You can click on that, flips the box around. All right, we still need your email address, right? That's your unique identifier. Oops, helps to highlight the right thing. And then we need one of the 2 following, right? And we don't need both. So either the account name or a phone number on the account, and that phone number is a customer-facing phone number. And then you click on the reset bar here. That's going to send you an email, right? It's going to have a link in the body of that email that lets you log in. It basically logs you directly into your user account page, at which point you can change your password. It will then log you back out, back to the login page. So we'll go back here. Again, you enter in your information. And see if I remember the correct password. There we go. Now, I'm using a test account that I use on a regular basis. So when I get logged in, it's taking me right to my dashboard page. If this is your first time logging into your account, you're actually going to be taken to your user account page. You can always get back to that page, like if you want to change your password, by clicking on your name up here at the top. It's towards just right of center. If you click on your name, a big pop-up appears. Again, the main thing people change is their password. You can change your date format. And you could also change your time zone and language. Now, as an admin, you also have access to the account level settings. Right, so you can change the technical contact, change the time zone. If you need to change the account name, you actually would need to reach out to our billing team, and that's billing@virtualpbx.com. And they would need to know, obviously, the original account name and what you want to change it to, because there's things on their side they have to make sure are linked properly. Again, you can edit the time zone for the entire account. Add-ons, this is new. This will allow you to add additional features to your account instead of going through our account services team. Currently, the only one that's available right now is the text forward feature, which basically allows you to have text messages that come into one of your phone numbers be forwarded via email. The billing portal, this is where you would click here to get instructions on how to change your like your credit card. And then you also do have the actual, any admin has the option here to cancel the account, which would close your account by the next billing cycle. Once you're done, click on the close box up here at the top right, and it'll take you back to the dashboard. One thing I should point out, on that first time you log in, the Dash Wizard will activate, right? So there'll be pop-ups telling you what certain things are. Those pop-ups also occur here on the dashboard page, right? Because we're here on the right. It will also occur on the users and the groups tabs as well. So speaking of those, on the left-hand side here, so I'm on my dashboard, right? It's highlighted here. Then there's my main number, auto attendance, etc. So these are all core, for the most part, core features of Dash. The exception is the auto attendance, which is a plan-specific feature. So you might need to upgrade your plan in order to have that feature. Back here at the top where my name is, again, click on your name, get back to that user account page. To the right of your name, you'll have a D&D toggle, right, for Do Not Disturb. Mine is currently active, right? It's a little white. It's got white on. If I click on it again, it'll turn black, and that means I'll be accepting calls, right? With it white, right now, if anyone tries to call me, they're going to go right to my voicemail. A little phone icon here to the right, that is the web phone. Because I have added a web phone to my user, I have this icon here. It opens up a new tab and takes me to webphone.virtualpbx.net. That page uses my Dash login information, and I can then use Chrome or Firefox to make and receive calls on my computer. The web phone does count as a web phone, which is usually what is referenced on our pricing pages. Little chat bubble here. This activates the virtualtext.app website, so it opens a new tab and allows you to make use of texting, assuming you've enabled it on your user. Little question mark icon here. This opens up the chat bubble at the bottom of the page. That way you can speak to our support team so they can walk you through various features. The three horizontal line icon here, this is the menu icon. This takes you to other Dash features. The majority of our training will be under the dashboard over here, the first one on the left-hand side. We'll touch on some of these others. Little arrow icon to the right, that means log out. Down here in center, total users, I have 9 users. So I have 9 people on my account who can make and receive calls. Most of our plans are based on a per user basis. So the more users you have, the higher your bill is going to be. Total devices, I have 21 devices, and there's a pie chart and breakdown here. So Dash was designed with VoIP phones in mind. If you don't know, VoIP stands for Voice over Internet Protocol. And in layman's terms, as far as I understand it anyway, that just means using your internet connection to make and receive calls. Now, this first one here is a soft phone. It's a software application that acts like a phone. So uses your internet connection to make and receive calls, counts as a VoIP device. This soft phone list here will, or the total, I guess, account, that includes VirtualPBX soft phones, as well as any third-party soft phones you may be making use of. A cell phone, right? You can add cell phone numbers as a contact number on any user. Something to keep in mind is when a call reaches out to a cell phone, right, that user, when they pick up on their cell phone, right, they're not going to be able to transfer that call. They can answer it, they can speak to the person, but if they need to actually transfer to someone else on your account, they either have to take a message and have whoever they need to speak to call them back, or tell the inbound caller to call back and hit the right extension number or menu option. That also applies to landlines. Web phone, so that Chrome or Firefox device. I should also point out, for using the web phone, only the desktop versions of those browsers are supported. The mobile versions are not. So you might run into problems if you try to use that on your cell phone. SIP phone. This is a piece of physical hardware. There's several manufacturers that we support, but basically it sits on your desk, has a usually connected via Ethernet cable to your router to get to your internet. Then you make and receive calls. There are several kinds of VoIP phones on the market, right? SIP is just a subtype. So when you're shopping, just make sure it's SIP compliant or compatible. Down here, I have unregistered devices, 1, and that means I have disabled one of my devices. That could be for any number of reasons. but it's still on, the device is still on my account, but I've turned it off for whatever reasons. Next up, I have total numbers. I have 12 phone numbers on this account. Your plan includes at least some number of phone numbers as part of your monthly plan price. Generally speaking, if you just signed up with us, any overages for that is $1.99 per month per phone number. If you just signed up, check the pricing page. If you worked with our sales team, you'd probably want to double check with whatever contract you signed about that. Then down here, I've got a breakdown. First, I have assigned numbers and spare numbers. Assigned numbers, I'm using it, right? Someone can dial that phone number or those phone numbers and expect to speak to somebody, leave a voicemail, join a conference, or send a fax, right? Spare numbers, I'm not currently using it. It counts towards my allotment, right? But I'm not using it for whatever reasons, whether that's because I took a number out of service, because my colleague Bob retired and he had a direct phone number, so okay, we can take that out and reuse it later. Or you're expanding into a new market, right? So you have a new storefront someplace. You get the phone number for that location, but you don't put it in service because there's no one there to answer calls yet. Next breakdown, I have USDID and US toll-free. US toll-free is actually US Canada toll-free, right? 800 number, 888, all the way down to 833 currently. USDID, that just means US local number, right? So a number in San Jose, California, USDID, just as if you had one in Grapevine, Texas. You can have international phone numbers on your account. If you'd like to do so, you want to email our porting team, and that's PORTING at virtualpbx.com. They'll need to know the city and country that you're interested in getting a number in. They'll let you know if that's possible or not, and if there's any additional documentation requirements. And those documentation requirements comes from the country in question. That's not from us. Conference bridges, I have two, and that means I've enabled conferencing on 2 of my users, right? So I have 2 people who moderate conferences. I'm going to go over here to the top right. I can't really highlight here without activating the page. But up here at the top, towards the top, I have my main numbers, right? So these 2 phone numbers, they behave the same way. They go to the same location on my system. They have the same main greeting. Then I have my conference number. You can have multiple conference room numbers if you want. This is a phone number that everyone dials to join a conference, right? So your staff members, your clients, your vendors, they would all dial this number to join a conference room. The fax box number, you can have one main fax box number. This is your inbound fax number. This also allows you to edit your fax box to allow for who's getting notifications when a fax comes in, as well as to allow for outbound faxing. The company directory, you've got 2 options here. You have this, You've got the CSV and the soft phone. CSV is just that. It's a spreadsheet file. You download it, and it has your staff members' names, their extension numbers to their primary devices. The soft phone is for use with the VirtualPBX desktop soft phone app, right? So if you're using our soft phone application on your Windows or Mac PC, you would download this file, upload it to your soft phone on your computer. This would allow you to see the other status of the VirtualPBX soft phones on your account, right? So my coworker Mike, I could see if he's using his soft phone, so I know not to call him, right? And likewise, you can see if I'm on a call or not. Now, if you have multiple devices in use on your users, that particular feature is not so useful, right? Because I'm not going to be able to tell if my colleague Mike is using his Yealink phone or he took a call on his cell phone. The VirtualPBX store, this is a link that opens in a new tab, takes you to store.virtualpbx.com, where you would order things like a VoIP phone or even network equipment. Down here, we have the account realm. Every account has its own account realm. This is used in a couple of things. First, if you're making use of someone else's soft phone app, the account realm is one of the pieces of information you would need to make that other soft phone app work. There's 3 pieces that we provide for you. The other thing it's used for is for outbound faxing. So for Dash, to send a fax out, you don't really need to log into your Dash account to send a fax out. You just need to use the email address that's associated with the fax box, typically with your user. You create an email like you normally do. In the to field, you put the plus sign, the number 1, the area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. Then you put the little @ symbol, and then you put in your account realm, and then you just need to attach a PDF or TIFF file, and then click send. Right, so the system looks at the to field, the from field, and the attachments. Anything you type in the body of the email or in the subject line is not going to get sent as part of your fax. And again, it has to be a PDF or a TIFF file. All right, up here towards the top, right across where it says VPBX new hire sandbox, I have caller ID. I can click on this. It's going to open up a big box. Now, this pull down unfortunately doesn't show all the numbers. It shows your main numbers, right? But my streaming software has problems with some pull downs. So you can select any of your main numbers, and that becomes your default number for a couple things. Most notably, for your VoIP phones, by default, whatever number you select here becomes their default outbound caller ID. Now, you have the option here to enter a company caller ID name at 15 characters, including spaces or special characters. That's completely optional. The company E911 information, the system wants a North American address here. So if you're in Canada, the zip code, just use your postal code. And in state, use your 2-character province abbreviation. Click on Save Changes. If you entered information in the company caller ID name, after you click on Save Changes, this information gets transmitted to the other carriers who support this feature. It takes them about 3 business days to update their databases or their servers before that information takes. Now, some caveats about the caller ID name, right? Not every carrier supports it, and that can include the end receiving carriers. Probably the biggest thing to be aware of is when you call a cell phone number, right? That last carrier, so the cell phone carrier, they get to determine what shows up on the phones on their network. Their typical options are pass everything through, right? So the name and number you submitted goes all the way through. Everyone would be happy. Second option is they see the number, right? So they're going to pass that through, but they look up their own database for that number and put whatever is on that database, which may not match what you've submitted with us. And then the third option, which is most common for our cell phone carriers, is they just pass the number through and nothing else. That's not something we can make them do. That's purely up to them. Basically, most of the cell phone carriers, they want to charge their subscribers an additional monthly fee in order to have the name information show up on every call that comes into them. Hold music button. This allows you to set up hold music for all your staff members. Now, hold music on Dash is after a call has come into your system, right? Your staff members picked up their phone and then press the hold button on their VoIP phone. And that's when hold music will play. You can upload your own file, .wav or .mp3, under up to 1 megabyte in size. To help you with that, I would recommend recording in mono. That will give you some more duration. A 1 megabyte MP3, for example, is about 5 minutes. But you would click on the Browse button here to find the file on your device. Click the up arrow icon, and once it finishes uploading, click on Save Changes. This pull down up here where it says Default Music, this pull down will show the other media files you have on your account, right? So hold music files, main greetings, voicemail greetings, they'll all be available there. Right, and then when you're done, click on Save Changes. Now, ours is actually part of main number, but before we get into configuring the main number, we want to make sure we have places for calls to go. So over here on the left, I'm going to go down here to where it says Users, and this shows all my users on the account. If you just signed up with this, you have one user. It probably does not have an extension number. So the first thing you would want to do is for your user is click on the extension box and assign yourself an extension number. All right, and then click on Save Changes. That way people can dial your extension number to reach you. Also, that allows you to set up your voicemail box. But Anyone who has this little blue suit icon, that's a system admin on the account. If they don't, right, the little gray person icon, they're just a standard user. Up here at the top, you can add new users. And you basically fill out this form, right? So first name and last name, the system wants some sort of text, right? You can literally put like A and then A, and the system's fine with that. The email address used for login needs to be unique for each user, right? So you can't reuse an email address for multiple people. And this is what the system uses to communicate with your staff people, right? So like password reset email information would go to this email address. Voicemail notifications would go to this email address. Password, you need to create a password for the user. And then you determine their main extension number. This system started off with extension 1000, so it's suggesting to me to use 1012. I can type in whatever I want and have a different extension number for this person if I need to. By default, the system will create a voicemail box for the user, and that voicemail box is intrinsically tied to the user. So for instance, if you created a user, you added a VoIP phone directly to that user, they could, it gets registered, right? They could pick up their VoIP phone, dial *98, click send or call, and that will log them directly into their voicemail box that you just created here. At that point, the system will walk that person, that staff member through creating their voicemail box PIN number and recording their name, which is what the system uses for the Smart PBX directory, and then their voicemail greeting. And then they're basically all set up. Here's your option to include that user in the user directory. Right? You can put a check mark in front of it. You can always change your mind later. You have an option here to send emails to an alternate address. So if you want those voicemail notifications or what have you, go to a different email address than the one you set for login, you can do so. And you can, by putting a check mark here and then putting in a different email address in this box. And you can always change that later. Lastly, this is one I like to make sure is checked, is send credentials to the user, right? So once I click on create user, this person gets an email, right, to the email address I use for login, saying, welcome to Dash, here are some links, etc. Now, if you only need to create one user, just click on create user. If you have to add multiple, create user and add another. Once a user is created, you can click on their name. You can always change their name if necessary. Right here, you can change their credentials. Right, click on that link, so you can change their email address and/or their password, and then you have to do it again. And there's a link here that sends the password reset email directly to the person. You just want them to create their password themselves. You can change their voicemail box PIN number here. Just put in 4 digits, click on Save Changes. You can also do that under the voicemail box tab. Here's your option to send emails to an alternate address. So I have a check mark here, so I'm sending any emails to this Gmail. Here's your option to put someone in the user directory or take them out. Over here, this little person icon, this pull down lets you change an admin to a user or a user into an admin. And then you would click on Save Changes. Little time or clock icon here, this allows you to change the time zone for the user. Right, so that way, like their voicemail timestamps are in their correct time zone. Little flag icon is for the display language. You can choose from English, French, German, or Russian. And that's what these web pages would display in for that person. Ringing timeout is the default is 20 seconds. Now it's grayed out on this user because they're making use of a feature called follow me calling, right? But if you just have one device, or even actually by default, you can just don't have to make use of the follow me feature and just have all their devices ring for 20 seconds. Now, 20 seconds, typically enough time to send a call to a landline or a VoIP phone, right? If you have a user who's only using a cell phone, you might want to increase that to 30 seconds, even up to 45, but 30 is typically enough. Extension box, users can have multiple extensions if you want them to. You can just click on add an extension box. Typically, one extension is enough for most people. You can choose to assign phone numbers directly to a user, right? So this is a direct dial number, right? So it only rings this person. You have your options here of add from spare or buy new. So add from spare is using a number that's already on your account that you're currently not using, right? One of your spare numbers. This is how you would reuse a number, right? So if, let's say, I left the company and they would then put this number in spare, right? And then they could assign it to, say, Dante, if he needed to have his own direct dial number. Buy numbers is how you add new numbers to the account. So let's hear. So add from spare, if you click on this, opens a box. It shows you your available spare numbers. You click on the box in front of it, click add selected, and then you click on save changes. And now that number is associated here. Right, and then I can unassign that. For buy numbers, when you click on it, you have your option here for local or toll-free. Toll-free, right, 800 number, 888 number, etc. You choose the prefix you want to work with. Click on search. It's going to give you a list of phone numbers that are available. Now, when I click add, that does nothing, right? That number is not reserved or anything. It's just in my cart. Right? Once I click, right, you can click search. You can add multiple numbers, add a location. I click on the little trash can icon if I decide I don't want it. But once I click by numbers, now the system is trying to make sure that number was truly available. Right? That list that you were just shown is what's referred to as a dynamic list, meaning you're actually competing with people in real time. But now it's making sure that it's truly here and available. And once so, it will add it to this location. And you see it here. Now, if we go to buy local, you need to know the area code, right? You can do a search, and you can get this message for any area code, and that includes the toll-free prefixes, right? And that just means that there's none currently available. Now, for local numbers, then what you would want to do is go back to search. You might need to use a search engine to find an overlay for the area code, right? So you do a search for area code 310 overlay, and you'll be told that that's 424. And then you see now that there are plenty of numbers to choose from. Click add by numbers, and that adds it to that particular location, and then save changes. Now, over here to the right, you have a little gear icon. You can update the caller ID for each phone number. Right? So you can outbound CNAM information, and you can turn on the ability to accept inbound CNAM information. Right? So that way, the name information shows up on your staff members' phones. You can have E911 information for each phone number. Right? So that's useful because that way, if you have people working remotely, you can have a different address for each person and associate that phone number specifically for E911 purposes only, right? It won't be for anything else. So when they dial 911, the correct address information is transmitted to emergency services. Prepend is a VoIP phone feature. This allows you to add text in front of the caller ID information that shows up on your staff members' VoIP phones. Basically gives them a heads up about the kind of call that they might be getting. Any changes you would make, you click on Save Changes. So I'm going to go ahead and unassign those two numbers. One thing to keep in mind is when you assign a phone number to a user or to a group, which we'll be getting to next, that number is available 24/7. Right? It does not have hours of operation. Okay, next up, we have the device box for the users. Right, so you can add from spare, right? So reusing a device or add a new device. First up is SIP phone. This is that piece of hardware, right? Physical device. You have these manufacturers to choose from. Some of them have a lot of phones. Some of them like half a dozen or so. But basically you choose the make and model of the phone you want to work with. You want to give it a name, right? So like, Bob phone or warehouse phone. Right? And then we need the MAC address. This is typically a sticker on the back of the phone. If the phone is on, plugged in, you can go under its status settings, and it will normally display there as well. You would enter that information here and then click on Create Device, and then Save Changes. Now, once it's here, you want to click on it again, or click on its name, right? Shows you the device name. Under Advanced, you want to select Miscellaneous, and where it says Allow Reprovision, click Unlock. Right, this box will disappear, and then you would click on Save Changes, and that's telling the system, hey, we're going to provision this phone. Right, we're going to make use of it. Now, as far as our dashboard is concerned, at this point, you don't need to do anything else. However, you need to log into that phone's web user interface. Basically, you get the IP address, enter that into your browser, and then give it a URL. Basically, you go to Auto Provision tab, put in a URL saying, hey, get your config file from here. For the specifics of that, you want to go to our support pages and do a search for auto provisioning. That's going to give you screenshots for these various manufacturers, as well as the proper syntax for the URL, and usually some settings just to verify. And then after that, the phone will reboot a couple times, and then should show up as a green device. Great. Next up is cell phone, and this would also apply for landline. Right? You still give it a name, right? So like David Cell, right? And then you type in the number, right? +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses, and then you click on Create Device, and then Save Changes. So if we go here, right, this is what it should look like. If we go to Advanced, you have options. This is the default settings for a new cell phone or landline added to the account. So what happens, right? So call comes in, reaches out to your cell phone rings, right? You pick up. When you pick up, you're going to hear a message saying, this is a forwarded call, please press 1. By pressing 1, you're telling the system, yes, you're there, and yes, you want to take the call, right? It's also a way for you to know, oh, this is a work call. Now, that's great if it's actually a person picking up the call. But let's say, for instance, you've contracted out with an answering service to handle your after-hours calls. They said, hey, just send your calls to this phone number, and our computer or automated service will pick up and handle your after-hours calls. So you would add that phone number that the answering service gave you as a cell phone or landline device. But what you want to do is come here under Advanced Options. It's where it says Allow Use of Cell Phone's Voicemail. You want to put a check mark here. When you do that, there's no message played about this is a forwarded call, please press 1, right? We hear that pickup tone, we connect the call, right? The reason you would do this for an automated answering service is because there's not someone there initially at the pickup point to press 1, right? It's usually an automated system of some sort, right? Likewise, if you did this on your actual cell phone, if you're not able to pick up the call, but your cell phone voicemail picks up, right? The system can send the call directly into your personal cell phone's voicemail. Some people really want that. Some people definitely do not. So that's a personal preference. Another thing that comes up is this one here, keep original caller ID. So customer Mary calls into the system, reaches my cell phone, and by default, I'm going to see her phone number show up on my cell phone. Now, if I don't recognize her number and I've been getting hit by robodialers or political calls or whatever, right, I may let it go to voicemail, and maybe I'm not able to reconnect with customer Mary to complete the sale or answer her question. So what I could do is uncheck this one here, right? Keep original caller ID. I can uncheck that. So now when customer Mary calls in on my cell phone, I'll see our main number, right? So whatever number I selected up here, that shows up on my cell phone's display. Hopefully I would recognize my main number and thus pick up the call, realizing that visually I have a visual cue now saying, hey, this is a work call, probably worth answering. Next up is soft phone. Actually, I should go to a different user for that. So let's go here and soft phone. Now, whenever you add a soft phone or a web phone to the account, you're going to get this warning message. Please make sure you read it at least once, if not a couple of times. Once you're done, click on close. You're going to get a big box show up here. And by default, the system sets it up as, or starts you off as, using a third-party soft phone, meaning you're using someone else's soft phone app. If you're doing that, right, you want to copy and paste the SIP username here. Then click on the SIP password box to see the password. So then you copy and paste this right into your soft phone app. Please do not change the password. And then here's the account realm, which is those are the 3 pieces of information you would need to make use of a third-party soft phone. However, if you want to use the VirtualPBX soft phone app, then down here below where it says View Config Guide, there it says Use Third-Party Application. This is a toggle which you can click on. So now when I click on it, it says Use VirtualPBX Application. I still need to give it a device name, but then I click on Create Device, and then click on Save Changes. Once I click on Save Changes, Dante gets an email saying his VirtualPBX soft phone is ready, and that email is also going to have his username, his login, and password, right? So we can log into the app, as well as download links to download the app to whatever device he's going to use it on, right? So Android or iPhone, a Mac, or Windows PC. You can use your soft phone on like a computer and a phone. However, you can't use them at the same time, right? So it can only be logged into the soft phone app on your computer. And then when you get a switch, you have to log out of it on your computer before you log into it on your phone. Web phone would be the only other thing I want to cover here. Again, you get that warning message. The web phone uses your dash login information to be able to log in. So it needs to be associated with the user, which is why it's easier to add it here directly to a user. You just give it a name, right? You type in something in this box, you click on Create Device, and then Save Changes, and it would show up here on the user. One thing you may have noticed, right, some devices are green and others are red. Green means it's registered, so we can send calls to it. Red means it's unregistered. So if I click here, right, unfortunately, I can't see all 3 of these devices in their status, right? So I know that the soft phone here and the cell phone are green, right? So that leaves me, I don't know what this one is, at least on this page. I could tell on the devices page. But generally speaking, green, good, red, not. All right, so then we've got user features. First up, caller ID number. This is if you want a staff member to have their outbound caller ID be their own phone number. So you would click up here to enable it. You select the phone number on their user, click on Save Changes. So now when they make an outbound call from their VoIP phones, their number on their user, right, the 775 number in this case, that becomes their outbound caller ID, not the 512 numbers I have set up under my main number. Virtual text. This is basically texting on the account, right? You turn this on, you select the phone number on the account, typically your main number, an auto attendant number, or a number assigned directly to the user. You click on Save Changes. Once you click on Save Changes, they'll get an email welcoming them to virtual text. There'll be download links so they can download the virtual text app to their cell phone. They can also go on their browser, go to virtualtext.app, log in there. They can then send and receive text. Now, this, if you just sign up with this feature may not show up, which means you're going to want to talk to our account services team. They need to talk to you about SMS registration. And you can look into that also on the Business SMS webinar series. Voicemail box. So in order for you to enable this, you need to have an extension number. So on that initial user that was created when you signed up with us, make sure you assign an extension number first, and then you can enable it. This is default settings for a voicemail box, right? Which means we attach voicemail messages to the email. So when a user gets an email left for them, right, they get an email, right? The date, the time, phone numbers involved, and then there'll be an MP3 attachment, and they can just click on that, listen to the message. Now, voicemail boxes can hold up to 100 messages. After that, they're full and cannot accept any more. the default setup here, you have 3 ways to listen to voicemails, but only 2 ways to manage your voicemail box, right? So one of the ways to listen to is via email. The other 2 methods, you can call into your system, right? So if you have a VoIP phone, pick up the phone, dial *98, always right into your voicemail box, so you can listen to your messages. You can also manage your voicemail box that way. The other way is actually logging into the website, right? It's dash.virtualpbx.com. And from the menu icon, select the user portal. That sends you right to your voicemail tab. So you can listen to your messages directly on your computer. You can download them. You can delete them. All right, follow me. Typically for users with multiple devices, this is something you have to set up for the staff members. It's not something they can set up on their own. And you determine how the system is going to work. So let me first disable this on this user here. All right, now I enable it. So this is when I first enable it, I haven't actually done anything here. In fact, any calls to this user are going to go to voicemail because right now all his devices are set to do not ring. So you need to tell the system, all right, here's the do not ring column. Which devices are you making use of? So like, for instance, I can uncheck these 2, right? So now I've got little green bars. I can click and drag these to the right to give them a ring time. Now along here at the top, these are timestamps, right? So the default's 120 seconds, but I can change that to say 60 seconds. And then I can click this distribute button, right? So it equalizes the time between these 2 devices. I can click and drag these, click distribute again, and change the order, right? And if I wanted to, I can click and drag these like so that rings both devices for the full allotted time. Now, one thing to keep in mind is the follow me calls. This is only for calls coming directly to the user, right? So i.e. they enter my extension number, right? If my user is part of a ring group, right? Basically the next feature we're going to be talking about, calls from the group that are offered to my user, they ring all of my devices, right? They ignore the follow me settings completely. Fax box, you can choose to have users have their own fax box if you want to. You just click enable. And then you have the option to use a spare number, buy a new number, or assign a new extension number. I recommend making use of a phone number, whether that's a new phone number or a spare number. This gives you the most versatility for the user, meaning they can send and receive faxes if they have a phone number assigned to their fax box. If you assign an extension number to it, right, that saves you some cost in terms of it's not an extra phone number on your account. However, you limit them, right, in terms of they can only ever receive a fax. They can never be able to send out because the system will use their fax box extension number as their outbound caller ID, which will cause it to fail. And also, you're potentially limiting who can send them a fax because not, like especially e-fax services, at least the ones I've looked at so far, they don't have the capability of send to an extension number. They just want you to enter a phone number only. So something to be aware of there. Conference bridge, when you click enable, that means this user becomes a conference moderator, right? So they could show up on the dashboard. And then right here, you would enter in a PIN number for them and then click on Save Changes. Your staff members can change their conference room PIN numbers on their own. It's one of the tabs under the user portal. Call forward, you have off, on, or failover mode. So your staff members can turn call forwarding off or on their own, either directly in their user portal or on their VoIP phones. Right, failover mode is something you would have to set up for them. And again, forwarding, it would only be, would apply if they're not using a cell phone as a device on their user. Right, so like on my user, I have 3 devices. One of those is a cell phone number. There's no point in me putting in call forwarding on this user because I could just put that cell phone as one of their last device under the follow me setting, right? So then it's still forwarding to their cell phone at that point, right? So this is only for people who are strictly using VoIP phones, and then if they want to forward to their cell phone because they're not going to be at their desk. Now, failover mode is if that VoIP, so they only have a VoIP phone, it goes offline, it becomes unregistered. You could click on this, then choose a mobile or landline, enter phone number, right? +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. So as long as that phone, their VoIP phone is offline, right? Calls to the user will be directed to the phone number you designated, right? Once their VoIP phone becomes re-registered again, that would stop, and then calls would go to their VoIP phone. Customized call recording. When you first enable it, it looks like this, right? And you need to tell the system what kind of calls do you want recorded. So basically, the ones that end in internal, right? Those are within your Dash account. So coworker calls, right? So Dante called me, or I called Dante, depending on inbound or outbound, right? External. So inbound external, customer Mary calls me, right? Outbound external means I called customer Mary. So you choose which of these you want enabled. Now, typically, often what we see is something like the external calls only being recorded or all. Now, your account includes some level of data storage as part of your monthly plan price. You can see that under the pricing page. If you have heavy call volume and you want to record every call, then you'd want to talk to our account services team about AWS integration. So you can link your Dash account to an AWS account of your own and have AWS to handle your call storage, right? So for heavy volume, for heavy calls, that's going to be more cost effective. But you need to get that set up on the account. Music on hold, right? You can have users have their own hold music. You just click enable, and then you upload a .wav or .mp3 file. Again, a mono 1 megabyte MP3 file is 5 minutes, right? But find the file on your computer, click the up arrow icon, and then save changes, or use a pull down to use an existing file on the account. Do not disturb, right? If currently that's enabled, basically that means I'm not taking calls, right? Calls that come to my extension number are going right to voicemail. Or I turn it back, disable it and save changes, so that means I'm accepting calls. Hot desking is a VoIP phone feature. If I click enable, I need to give it a hot desk ID number. I typically recommend making use of 4-digit extensions and then using that extension number as a hot desk ID, and then save changes. You can optionally require a PIN number. And basically, for your VoIP phone users, this is designed for like a shared office environment or hybrid scheduling. So I come into the office on Tuesday, I sit down at desk number 2, I pick up the VoIP phone there, I hit *11 to turn on hot desking. The system asks for my hot desk ID. I enter that, and then it tells me calls to my user will now be sent to this device, right? So the rest of my workday, right, calls are coming to me at desk number 2. At the end of my day, I pick up the handset, I dial *12 to turn off hot desking, and I go home. Right, next time I come into the office, let's say that's Friday, I sit down at desk number 5, pick up the handset, *11, enter my hot desk ID. Now calls are coming to me at that phone. Right, so next up is groups, right? This is departments, sometimes referred to as ring groups or hunt groups. Up here at the top, you click on add group. You need to give it a name. You need to give it an extension number. And then you click and drag your staff members that you want to be in the group. And then you click on create group here at the bottom. Once a group is created, you can click on its name. Right, so you can always change the name if you need to. This is generally internal use, right? Your customers aren't going to know necessarily what the name of a group is. The group call attempts, you have little arrows here on the far right, so you can increase or decrease it. And that just is how many times the system offers the calls to the members of the group. Here's your option to delete a group if you no longer need it. And if you made changes, click on Save Changes. Then to the right of their name, you have the members box. You can click on that. Here you can see the staff members assigned to that group and how calls are being offered to them. So in this case, right now, I'm doing what's called blast ringing or ring all, right? So call comes in, it rings all 3 people's phones at the same time. Whoever picks up the call gets the call. Now, that can be confusing for staff members, right? So if Taylor and Dante pick up a call at the same time, right? The system has to decide who's getting the call. So it picks Dante. Well, then Taylor, when he picks up, right, he says his greeting and then he's got dead air. Now, in an office environment, right, Taylor could probably hear Dante on the phone go, oh, okay, Dante got the call. Not a big deal. Or if he's an admin, he can check the call logs to make sure that's what happened. Right. But if in a remote work situation, right, Taylor may not know who got the call. So now he's got to send a message to his boss going, hey, I picked up call, but I got dead air. That's where an admin would want to check the call logs to see if it was a group call and that someone else picked up the call. And that's why Taylor had dead air. Now, up here at the top, these are timestamps, right? So just like under the follow me settings, I can change the total duration. I can click distribute, right? So now whenever a call comes in, it always rings Taylor first, right? And then David and then Dante. Now, the disadvantage of this setup is call comes in, right? Taylor answers the call. He's helping that first call. If a second call comes into him or into the group, right, the system doesn't skip Taylor, even though he's on a call. It still tries to ring him, right? He might hear call waiting if his device is set up that way. But after that 40 seconds, then it starts ringing to David, right? Then he can pick up. So that means that second caller is waiting for 40 seconds before someone can actually help them. Now, you can click on these bars here, so there's less lag time for the second or third callers. So that way, people are not waiting on hold as long. Down here, you can add additional users if you need to, right? And then you can click distribute again, etc. Also, you can remove people if you don't need them in there any longer. Right? Groups have to have at least one extension number, but you can add multiple if you need to. Just click down here to add an extension number. Groups can have their own phone number. Right? You can have option for buy new numbers or add from spare. Again, that phone number is available 24/7. Right? No hours of operation. Group features. First up is ring back. So call comes into the group, rings your staff members' phones. That ringing sound is then piped back to the inbound caller, right? Ring back. But if you don't want that ringing sound to come through, right, you would click enable and then select the media file. So if you have a file on your account, or you can upload .wav.mp3, ideally recorded in mono, up to 1 megabyte in size. Click the up arrow icon and then save changes, and that file will play instead of the ringing sound. Now, the system will not loop your file for you. So you want to make sure that the duration of that file matches the total ring time you have set for the group, right? So the default is 120 seconds on a group. But if we go back to the members, right? So whatever you have set in this last box, right? In this case, 120 seconds, that's what you want to make sure that your ring back file is at least that long. Next action. Right, up here is where you enable it, and this is if no one picks up, what do you want the system to do with the call? You have a pull down here to select where you want it to go. Generally speaking, most commonly chosen is a voicemail box, right? But you can choose, like, have it go to a user, have it go to a different group, ring to a specific phone, etc. And then click on Save Changes. Allow call forward. You can click to enable, and this allows your VoIP phone users to make use of call forwarding, right? So if you only use VoIP phones, but they want to take calls when they're away from their desk, then you can make use of call forwarding so they can send it to their cell phone. Caller ID prepend, this is for your VoIP phone users. When you click up here to enable, you can add additional text or numbers in front of the caller ID that shows up on your staff members' VoIP phones, basically to give them a heads up about what the call is about. I recommend using one or the other, not both. Right, because one that's going to make the caller ID display quite long, and can be confusing. All right, so we have users, we have groups, and likely devices on the users as well. So let's go to main number. Up here at the top, these are your main numbers. Right, you can buy new or add from spare. You've got the little gear icon here, so you can update the caller ID, E911, or prepend for any of your numbers. Then you have your office hours strategy. You have 24-hour open office, right? So you're open 24/7, or you can set your custom office hours. Now, if you have custom office hours for each day of the week that you're open, put a check mark in front of that day, and then choose your open hours in this 24-hour or military time. You can also choose to have your system go to lunch at the same time every day that you're open. You would just click a box here and then set your lunch hours in 24-hour or military time. And when you're done, click on Save Changes. Office holidays, if you're closed for holidays, put a check mark. And then over here on the right, you have Add Holiday, you have Single Day, Date Range, and Advanced. And I have an example of each one of those here. So single day, whoops, like I have here for Christmas Day, right? You give it a name, you choose the month and the date, and then you click on Save Changes. Date range, I have for holiday, right? Gave it a name, a start date, and an end date, and then Save Changes. Advanced is like for Memorial Day, right? So name, choose the month, and this second pull down, you have the options of 1st through 5th, as well as last, and then the day of the week, right? And then Save Changes. If you need to remove a holiday, just click on the little trash icon here to the right, and then click on Save Changes. And then we have incoming call handling. So when people dial my main numbers up here, how do I want calls handled during my open hours, during my after hours, and during my holidays, right? If I had set up lunch hours, there would be a lunch hours tab here as well. But calls come in, they're going here to my virtual receptionist during my open hours. This is a link, so I can click on that, give me a big box. On the left is my main menu, right? These are what people can press on their phones to navigate through my phone system. And I click on Add Route here to give me a new row. Now this first pull down, you have 0 through 9, the star key, and the default action, right? This second pull down, these are locations on your system. So if we go up here, right, the Smart PBX directory or the dial by name directory, right, you can have a menu option go to a specific person, right, specific user, call queues if you're making use of the call center, groups, right, any of your ring groups that you set up, a menu option go to a specific device, right, so specific phone rings. Not always recommended because if the device you chose doesn't have built-in voicemail, then the inbound caller can get frustrated. Scrolling down, you can have a menu option go to a voicemail box, and then you can also choose a media file. Media file, the only concern there is that once the media file is done playing, then the call ends, right? And sometimes that's people use that for like hours or directions. Over here on the right, we have our greeting options. Text-to-speech is simply you type in what you want the system to say, and it reads it back in a computerized or robotic voice. The text-to-speech is limited to 250 characters, not words. It does not count spaces, however. You can sometimes get a little bit beyond the 250, but 250 works consistently. The system doesn't allow you to name the file, however, right? It names it for you. So in this case, it would be my main, it would name it main open hours menu TTS, right? Because this is my main, right? During my open hours, then takes menu, and because text-to-speech, right, TTS. Now, say I don't like this option here and I edit it. Well, once I click update and save and change, save and then save changes, I'm gonna have two files called main open hours menu TTS. So if you're gonna make use of the text-to-speech reading, my recommendation is once you create one, on the left-hand side, we have a greetings tab, which we'll be getting to shortly. Go there, find the main open hours menu TTS, edit it, and change the name to something you'll recognize. So that way, if you need to edit it, then you know, oh, this was the second one, this was the third one, etc. So you know what is going on. Right? Text-to-speech is good for if you're just starting out, right? Or like you're either a startup, you've never used a PBX system, or you're just not sure how you want things to go yet. Right? So just give you a heads up about what's going on. You can upload your own file, .wav, .mp3, recorded in mono, up to 1 megabyte. Just click on choose file and find it on your computer. Then update, save, and save changes. Choose from a pre-existing recording. You can choose from this pull down any media file that's on your account. You see that a main open hours menu TTS file is selected here. And this is why you want to name things that are easily recognizable to you for any pull down option. You can record it over the phone. Now, the system says pick up a phone registered to the account. That means a VoIP phone, right? That's a security feature. Because saying, hey, it's a registered phone on the account. We know it's part of this account, so it's okay for it to change the main greeting. If that doesn't work for you, for whatever reasons, then under the settings, right here where it says allow outside recording, turn that on, right? You need to click save and save changes. That allows you to call in using a cell phone or a landline and then change the main greeting. Now, right, you still have to dial your main number and then you need this PIN number. Now, if you just signed up with us, right, if you dial your main number right off the bat, you're going to hear a message saying that the greeting for this menu has not been created yet. And that will then ask you for a PIN number, right? This PIN number specifically. If you have a greeting in place, right, the main greeting plays, let's say you have a text-to-speech greeting, for example. Well, when that greeting starts playing, you can enter the PIN number. It will still then walk you through creating a greeting over the phone. Now, this PIN number is specific to this time of day, right? So like the system is set out to be open Monday to Friday. So if I called in on Saturday and I use this PIN number, it won't work. It'll come up as an invalid option. But then you record it over the phone, you save the file. Now, if you just started with us, right, so that you have no greeting in place there, the system will name it for you. It'll be like your account name or your account number is typically what it uses, right? If you had, like, say, that text-to-speech greeting in place, then it doesn't change the file name, but it changed the content, right? So main open hours menu TTS will now have your voice instead of the computerized robotic voice. Professional recording services, when you click order, this opens a new tab and takes you to Snap Recordings, where you can order a custom greeting from them, where they have something like 100 voice actors and actresses to choose from. They deliver to you via email, so then you would come to upload your own file. All right, settings, number of retries on missed dials. This is how many times your inbound caller can make a mistake. Right, so when I have one here, that means they can make one mistake, which means they have 2 total attempts. All right, so they call in, they press 5, right? That's not a valid menu option. It's not a valid extension number. The system will replay the greeting, and let's say they press 7 the second time. Well, that's not a valid option, right? Not a valid extension. In that case, it's going to send the caller to my default action, right? So the PBX directory. Right, if I remove the default action, click the little X here, on that second attempt, the system says, we did not recognize your entries, goodbye. The dialing timeout is how much time the system listens for an additional button press after the first one, right? So that inbound caller presses 5, the system waits for 5 seconds, says, oh, they meant only 5. So then the system goes through, like, double checking to make sure it's not a menu option or an extension, and then would play the greeting again. We already covered allow outside recording. Allow dialing extensions, by default, this is on, and that just means if they enter a valid extension number, the system will transfer the call. Right? If I turn this off and then click save and save changes, then the inbound caller can only ever press these menu options. So 0, 1, or 2. And then here, yeah, this press the playing of invalid entry. Right, so if you don't want that message saying we did not recognize your entry, you can click that. That turns that on. So that means that message no longer plays, right? It turns on suppressing of that message. Any changes you make to your main menu, your greetings, or your settings, you need to click save here. It'll take you back to your incoming call handling. You need to click save changes here. So you're clicking save twice. Right, now the second option here, for my after hours, I have calls coming here, going to my support group, and then the virtual receptionist. This is pull down here, basically lets you select a group, a user, a queue, or a device, right? This is your live operator answer, giving somebody or several people a chance to answer the call first. If they're not able to, then the inbound caller is sent to your virtual receptionist, which they can send, they'll hear a greeting, and then they have these menu options. Third option, first pull down, you can basically offer it to wherever you want in the account, right? A user, a group, call queue, a media file, or even a device, right? If that doesn't get answered, then to the voicemail box you selected. Now, in this case, up here at the top, the last option is skip the voicemail, where basically I'm not having it ring to a device or a group or a person, nothing. I'm just saying, hey, send us straight to this voicemail box because we're on holiday. Any changes you make, like in terms of like, oh, let's say during my holidays, I want to change it to this, right? I will still need to click Save Changes here. Right, main conference number, you can have multiple conference room numbers if you want, right? But when you click on the custom greeting, you click to enable, you can type in a text-to-speech greeting. Even if you leave this disabled, the system says welcome to the conference and then prompts the inbound caller to enter the conference room number and the PIN number. The main fax box number, you can have just the one number, so you have no options to add extra. But you also have the option here then to edit the fax box. Right? The inbound notification email, right? This is designed to put in an email address. That email address gets an email every time a fax comes in, right? They'll have the date, the time, phone numbers involved, and a PDF attachment. If someone dials your fax box number and then hangs up, right? Because like let's say they dial from their cell phone, oh, fax tones, wrong number, click, right? This email address still gets an email saying there was a failed fax, inbound fax attempt. Now, hopefully you get the caller ID information in the email. It says wireless caller, so you know, oh, that was a wrong number. But if it's a number you recognize or were expecting a fax from, then you'd want to contact that person. Outbound permissions, this is designed to put your company email domain here. That way, everyone at your company can send a fax out, even if they're not a user on your Dash account, right? They just need that +1 area code number, @ symbol, the account realm, and just attach a PDF or a TIFF. All right, auto attendance is a plan-specific feature. A couple use cases. One would be if you want to do sub-menuing, right? So like people call your main number and then you say +1 for English and 2 for Spanish. You could then create, or you would ahead of time, have created an auto attendant for English and Spanish that would have greetings in the appropriate language. And then the menu options would go to people who speak the appropriate language. The other use case is if you have multiple businesses that you want to have on the same account, right? So they have their own phone numbers, their own main greetings, but you can't have the same staff people answer calls on them. Either scenario, up here at the top, you click on Add Attendant. You need to give it a name. You need to give it an extension number, right? The extension number, probably not something any of your customers would know, but allows your staff to transfer calls to the correct auto attendant if necessary. Once an attendant is created, you can click on its name. This is the default. We're saying it's unavailable in main menu, meaning it's a standalone attendant, i.e. second business. If I click on this and put it available in main menu and then click on Save Changes, now it's a sub-menu option, right? It can show up as one of my locations to for next action on a group, for example, as well as just one of my button presses under my main menu or the virtual receptionist. Auto attendants can have their own phone numbers, right? They can have multiple, so you can add from spare, buy new, and you have the little gear icon here as well. You can have multiple extension numbers on an auto attendant, although generally speaking, they only need the one. And then you have the little wrench icon here under settings. Right, you have open hours, after hours, and holidays, right? This matches what was set up under the main number, right? So your secondary businesses have to have the same hours of operation as your primary. If you have a business that's 24/7 and one that's Monday to Friday, you'd want to talk to our account service team about what your best options are in terms of having them both on one account or having two separate accounts. Devices shows all your devices on the account. So green means it's registered, so we can send calls to it, or they can make calls out, right? Red means it's unregistered. Now, when it's for a soft phone, that could be they're not simply logged in at this time, right? It could also be they're having a network problem or an ISP problem. Up at the top, you can add new devices, right? SIP phone, cell phone, etc. Soft phone, on the devices page, you can only add it as a third-party softphone, right? So if you wanted to add another VirtualPBX softphone, you have to go to the user. You can add web phones directly here, but they won't work until you assign it to a user because it needs the user login information. Here we have the little wrench icon here for settings, right? So you can change the name of the device. Under advanced, right, audio for a physical device, whether it's a soft phone or like this Yealink, you want to make sure you have G711U and G711A under the right-hand side under selected, and that's click and drag, right? And then save changes. External caller ID, you can set the phone to have a specific outbound caller ID always. The emergency information, right? Here, this phone number has this address associated with it. So if someone picks up this particular Yealink device and dials 911, this is the address that gets transmitted to emergency services. For soft phones, if you're making use of the VirtualPBX soft phone, the codec over here on the right should be Opus, and that's the default. So you don't necessarily have to change it. But if you use a third-party soft phone to provision like another device, you probably want to change it to the G711A or U. Next up is the greetings tab. This shows all your media files on the account, right? Hold music files, main greetings, voicemail greetings, right? You've got the name, the source, right? TTS is text to speech. Upload means the file was uploaded. Recording means it was recorded over the phone. This column here allows you to play back the message directly in your browser, right? So you can see if it's still valid or not. If for some reason that doesn't work, then you have the download column, so you can download it directly to your device, and use your whatever device's media file player or media player to listen to it. Here, the little wrench icon here under edit, this is where you would change the name. All right, so like I can change this to main 1. That way I know it's the first main greeting I created, and then click on save changes. Likewise, if I know, if I know I don't need it, right, I can click on this and then click on the delete greeting. Next up is the numbers tab. This shows the numbers on your account, right? We're under numbers in use here. So I can see where they are or where they're going, right? I can't unassign a number here or assign a number here. I can adjust the caller ID, E911, and prepend for each number on this page. Spare numbers, this shows the numbers you're not currently using. If you want to remove a number, it first needs to be a spare number, right? Once it's on this page here, you can click on the box in front of it, right? And then I have the option here to delete. I click delete and then confirm. And now those numbers are removed from my account. This port link starts the porting process, and that just means you're moving a number from one carrier to another, right? So from AT&T to VirtualPBX. Just click on new port request, you give it a name, choose local or toll-free. Now the system wants you to upload a PDF copy of your most recent bill, right, dated within 30 days. There's a long form to fill out after that. And then you can download a blank LOA or letter of agency, and then you can upload a completed and signed LOA. Now, the information on the form, right, like in terms of it asks you for the company name and address, and on the LOA, right, that should match what your current carrier has on file for you. The LOA does need a signature. It could be a digital signature file, that's fine, or you can, print it out, sign it, scan it back in, right? Printing your name twice, or typing it in twice, it's going to cause a rejection and delay the port request to be complete. Generally speaking, toll-free numbers take about a week to port, right? 3 to 5 business days. Local numbers usually average about 2 to 3 weeks. In both cases, that assumes everything is correct. If we get a rejection, right, we double check to make sure there wasn't a typo from us. Or alternate information, right? So like if we had 2 addresses for you, we would try with both addresses first. But after that, we would have to contact you saying, hey, we're getting a rejection for this reason. You need to contact your current carrier to find out what the proper information that they are looking for in order to port out. Voicemail boxes, right? Shows your voicemail boxes on the account. Any voicemail box that has an entry here under user, that means that was a voicemail box that was created with the user. But up here at the top, you can create your own voicemail boxes, like for your groups, for example. You just need to give it a name, a voicemail box number, and then a PIN number. Click on create device or create voicemail box, excuse me. Then under the wrench icon, right, this basic information, this is what you'd use to listen to voicemails over the phone or even change the voicemail greeting over the phone. Right, under advanced, you've got greeting media. You can upload a media file, right? So the voicemail greeting, or select an existing file on the account. Now you've got two options here, media and temporary. Media is your standard file, right? That's what you play 90% of the year. The temporary file is if for like vacation or out of office messages. So if you have something selected under temporary, it plays. Even if you have something also selected under media, it does not play both of them. It plays one or the other. Once you set temporary back to none, then your media file will play. Recipients. So the voicemail box is created with the user, right? They have a built-in recipient, right? So that email address used for login. But for any voicemail box, whether it's as a user or one you created here, you can click here to add new recipients and add additional recipients. Obviously, if you just created the voicemail box on this page, you want to add at least one recipient. For the user voicemail boxes, typically you'd only do that for like the managers so that way they can make sure voice messages aren't being missed. Options. So once a voicemail box has a media file and recipients, you can click on already set up. And then you can double check if you want to attach messages to the email and or if you want to delete after notification. So let's say you have a voicemail box for your support group. You don't want that voicemail box to ever get full. So in that instance, you might want to click delete after notification. So that way, once the system sends an email out saying, hey, you have a new voicemail, it removes that voicemail from the system so the voicemail box itself does not get full. Text forward. Up here top, you would add forward number. Choose the phone number in question, and then choose either or enter either an email address or a webhook. Right? A webhook means you're linking it to some other software. You can choose one or the other, not both. And then you click on create text forward. And this is so like for an email, for instance, when a text comes in on this phone number, this email address gets an email saying you have a text, right? And it has the information about the content of the text as well. So that way you at least have the ability to accept inbound texts. Call logs shows your call history on the account. A green arrow to the right is a call coming into the system. You can click on it to get some additional details. So you can see here it went out, it connected with this device, right? The call ended normally. The yellow arrow to the left is a call that went out from the system. Little fire extinguisher icon here. This will create an email for you that's already pre-addressed to support@virtualpbx.com. And this will have the technical details of that call. I do ask that if you do make use of that, to make sure that you enter context, right? In the body of that email, type in like, oh, I had one-way audio or what have you. We may not be able to tell just from the technical details about why you're sending a call into us. So you have the options for today, right? This week, this month. All of these have the option to download it as a CSV file. Custom, you can also choose your date range. So you can go back to like the previous month, for example, and then click filter. Again, you can download the file. The system will let you go back up to 12 months. If you need to go further than that, then you would need to contact our support team and we'd have to create an escalation for you. Our engineers can go back up to 18 months, but after that, they're not able to get the data. So if you need your call log information for any kind of compliance reasons, you'd want to make sure that you do this basically on a monthly basis. Feature codes. These are ways for your VoIP phone users to access Dash features directly from their VoIP phone. This is a page under our support pages. You can also, there's also a document called the Phone Commands Cheat Sheet, which has the feature codes and little context help here. All right, so that's the dashboard. Next up is blacklists. This is an included feature. This allows you to block phone numbers from reaching your system. You would click Edit Blacklists over here on the left, and then you would either click Add to create a new list or select an existing list. Right, you need to give it a name. And then here you choose, are you blocking anonymous calls or not? Right now, this list is not blocking those, meaning if a call comes in and doesn't present valid inbound caller ID, then it would get blocked, right? And actually, when I turn it on, it would get blocked. If it's off, then that call comes through. But beyond that, you click here where it says add number, +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses. Keep clicking add until you're done. Once you are done, you would click save here, click on back to settings, and make sure your list is on the right here under selected. Right, that means you might need to have to click and drag, right? But once they're here, then click update. All right, faxes, whoops. This is also an included feature. This is your fax manager. You can choose to look at the fax box in question, right? So I'm on my inbound faxes tab, so I can see the date, the time, phone numbers involved, number of pages. I can download the file. I put a check mark here so I can remove it if I have too many faxes. I have the outbound fax tab here. Again, select the fax box. And I can see I have 2 successes and 2 failures. If you see failures here, that means the system had a problem communicating with the other phone number. So here you said, I have a timeout waiting for initial communication. That means the other phone number didn't pick up, right? Or if it did, we did not get a fax tone, right? So it could be a wrong number. You'll click on the little detail icon here, right? You should see status failed on that. But if you scroll down, you'll see the reason down here. Most commonly, we see like user busy. Every now and then, what can also happen is there can be that initial connection, but then something interrupts it, which then ends the fax. Email to fax logs. If you see entries here, that means we had a problem, or the system had a problem processing the request, right? So you can see the email address is involved. You click the little eyeball icon here to the far right, and you can see, in this case, no valid attachment, right? So meaning a PDF or TIFF file was not included, right? They may have forgotten the attachment completely, or you chose something other than a PDF or TIFF. Number Manager, this takes you back to your spare numbers page. The reports, this opens up a new tab. It takes you to reports.virtualpbx.com. This is for the advanced reporting feature, which is a plan-specific feature. Under the show notes, you want to look at the advanced reporting demo to see what reports can do, or at least some of what they can do. And if you're interested in that, then you want to contact our account services team. Voicemails, this takes you to your voicemail box manager. So as an admin, you can get to any voicemail box on the account. You can see their voicemail box, the voicemail messages, right? So you can see the date, the time, phone numbers involved. You can play it back. You can download it. If you put a check mark in front of it, you can move it to a different voicemail box or change its status. Call center. This opens up a new tab and takes you to callcenter.virtualpbx.com. This will show up if you are making use of the call center, which is just ACD queues, is what we used to refer to them as, right? Queues are an advanced version of groups, right? So groups, you can only have like ring all or ring in order. And it doesn't keep track or doesn't care if someone's on a call or not. Within a queue, right, if a queue member is on a call, the system skips them and offers it to a next available agent. You have routing strategies like round robin, which will equalize that over time, or most idle, right? Whoever's been waiting the longest gets next call. Additionally, within a queue, your staff members can log themselves in and out of the queue, right? As well as mark themselves away. So like during the lunch hour, mark themselves away, go to lunch, come back, and then mark themselves ready again. So that way, while they're at lunch, the system doesn't try to offer them calls and waste hold time. But again, under the show notes, go to the ACD Queues Pro demo. Dynamic caller ID, this is another plan-specific feature. This allows you to create rules to change the outbound caller ID of your VoIP phones. So we'll click start here with this Vegas one here. So here I've created, I gave it a name. I chose a phone number on my account from this pull down. And I said, whenever my staff members dial a 702 area code phone number, the system will automatically change the outbound caller ID of their VoIP phone to the 702 number. Right, and then I click on Save Changes. The other thing you do here is create a feature code. So I said this, called it for San Jose. I chose a 408 number. Now my staff members need to dial *951, and then they enter the area code and the phone number they're reaching out to. And when they do that, the system will then automatically change the outbound caller ID to this 408 number I selected. Right? The point here is that it helps your staff member appear as if they're calling locally. Monitor is another plan-specific feature. This allows you to see the status of your staff. Doesn't matter what phone they're using. You can say go under employees or devices, as well as who's busy, who's available, etc. Up here, active inbound calls. Each one would have its own box, and you would see who they're speaking to in terms of who among your staff they're speaking to. Park calls, if a park call is here, their name and their caller ID, as well as a parking spot number. Recording Manager, this opens up a new tab and takes you to recordings.virtualpbx.com. You need to log in with your Dash login credentials, but there you can see your call recordings. Right? You can listen to them, download them, delete them, etc. Webhooks is a plan-specific feature. I mentioned this under text forward, but this is programming. Right? This allows you to link your Dash account to other software. You can go to developer.virtualpbx.com to see sample code of what we have done in terms of linking Dash to other software. Also in the show notes, there is the introduction to Zapier demo, or webinar, excuse me, that also covers some of webhooks and what we have done. If you're interested in this, you actually need to talk to our sales team. And then lastly, the user portal. Every user has access to their own user portal. It starts you off on your voicemail tab, right? So they can listen to the voicemail messages, they can download them. If they put a check mark here, right, they can change the status. The call history tab, they can see their own call history, and they can change the date range. Click filter and see more of their range. The fax tab is only good for users that have their own fax box, but then they can see their fax box history. Contact list, this shows everything within your Dash account, right? So that way, it makes it easier for your staff to transfer calls to other staff members or groups or auto attendants. This is not something they can edit on their own, right? Like I couldn't change this name or add someone else. Conference tab, only usable for users that have the conference feature enabled. Over here on the right, this is where they adjust their PIN numbers. Typically, you want the moderator PIN and the participant PIN numbers to be different. Your staff members can choose to have people join a conference muted or deafened, as well as play entry and exit tones. Over here, the plus icon allows your staff members to invite other Dash users to a conference. The lock icon to lock a conference so no one else can join. Mute everybody, unmute everybody, and the conference call. Also, while in the conference call, each participant has their own box as well as each moderator. This allows the moderator to mute a specific person or even kick out a specific person. And the settings and devices tab right here is where your staff members can enable call forwarding on their own. Right? They just put a check mark here. And then in this box here, +1 area code and phone number, no spaces, dashes, or parentheses, and then save, right? So that means while this is on, calls are being sent to this phone number. Then they uncheck it and then save to end call forwarding. Right, and here they can see their status of their devices. And that is everything. I haven't seen any questions come up, so I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. I thank you for your time today, and I believe this Thursday, uh, my colleague will be having another business SMS webinar. You can confirm that by clicking on the business SMS webinar series link, and it'll show you which ones are upcoming. Thank you for your time.